Okay, so we've talked about the dice system and we've talked about how magic works. Now it's time to talk about the most confusing part of Changeling, Chimera. So allow me to read the definition right out of the book for you. Chimera, a bit of dream made real. Unseen by mortals, chimera are part of the enchanted world. They may be objects or entities. Yes, so chimera are part of the dreaming, which is where the fairies come from. And they're made basically out of imagination. But they have just enough of the real world, just enough banality fused into them that they can be interacted with, at least by people associated with the dreaming, like fae or changelings. So basically what ends up happening is most of the time a mortal will be asleep, and when you're asleep you're in the dreaming, and they manage to create something, a chimera. Other times a changeling or a fairy might intentionally create one using their skills and magic. But how do they work? Well, normally only changelings and fae can see chimera. Sometimes chimera are powerful enough that mortals can see them, and sometimes they're powerful enough that they can interact with mortals, but it usually doesn't work out that way. Well, how does it work if only changelings can see it? Well, let's say that, let's look at changelings as mortals see the mortal. Other changelings see the fairy half and the mortal half. So because mortals can't see the fairy half, they can't see anything that's happening to it, they can't see chimera. But changelings absolutely can. And a chimerical sword, for instance, can kill the fairy half of a changeling, but it won't affect the mortal half. So oftentimes, fairy war is done with chimera, with imaginary weapons, imaginary monsters even. Some changelings create vehicles, chimerical vehicles, others create imaginary companions. And I'm going to explain the nature of chimera more when I talk about the setting of changeling, but right now let's get down to the nit and grit of it. So, in World of Darkness, one of the things you have to consider at character creation is called background. And just like anything else, you put dots into different backgrounds, you put ranks in them. And one of the unique backgrounds in Changeling is called Chimera. You put dots or ranks in Chimera at character creation, and that determines how powerful of a chimera you happen to have. So for example, if you put in one dot, you might have a small patch of mold that just bubbles on your shoulder and it's your friend. Or you might have a speck of light that flitters around you. If you have two dots, this is something that's now almost intelligent. The example it gives is a small jeweled dragon with a smoking problem, a giant teddy bear with a Brooklyn accent, or a talking moon cat. At three dots, you have something that has a mind of its own, finally. But it's not the best. It is more of a hindrance than a help to you. At four dots, you have a highly intelligent chimerical companion that can be of great help to you. So something like maybe a unicorn that has the power to appear before mortals, or a griffin that can fly. Maybe an owl that can serve as a guide for you. And at five dots, this is where it gets very interesting. This is the most powerful, mechanically speaking, a Chimera can be that's made by a player character. So this is examples are an ancient jinn that can affect both the dreaming and the real world, or a dragon with a broad variety of reeds at its disposal. What are reeds? Well, reeds are powers that Chimera can pick up. You can find more about them later on in the book. Yes. Sorry about that. You can find that starting on page 220. Page 220 onward has great rules on building Chimera. So when you put dots or ranks into the Chimera background, it gives you a number of what are called Chimera points to work with. And you can use that to craft a Chimera using the rules in the back of the book. So you can alter it a little bit. You can make it more physical than imaginary. So you can make something that has the power to harm mortals. You might create something that is exactly the opposite, something that is so imaginary it can never leave the dreaming. You can give it magic. You can give them the power of possession. You can give them the power to travel about the dreaming. You can make them venomous to other changelings. You can give them weapons. You can craft a weapon made of Chimera. A chimerical weapon. So you could create a chimerical gun if you wanted to. Anyway, so Chimera work just like characters do once they hit that certain level of intelligence. They're mostly non-player characters, so your storyteller will most likely be playing your Chimera. You can use Chimera as a storyteller as a very powerful tool, something that affects the changelings, that won't affect the real world, and it can create a very interesting challenge where the changelings might be under attack on a busy street and they have to fight something off without drawing too much attention to themselves. It's very fun. But I am going to take this time to explain what happens when a changeling is killed by a chimera, a chimerical weapon, or something else of that nature. And what happens is they lose their fairy half. Their fairy half has been killed. They resume all mortality, and they have no memory of the dreaming, of being a changeling, of anything like that. They might remember their changeling friends, but only as their mortal selves. They might even continue to want to be friends with the other changelings, but they'll quickly realize that they don't like doing this anymore. They don't like these people. They don't even know who you are anymore, etc. And I spoke in an earlier video about how Changeling is a very lethal system. It really is, because you can lose your character to a chimerical death. You can lose your character to simply becoming too mortal, becoming too banal. In other words, you just don't have the willpower and imagination anymore. And you just become fully mortal. Your changeling half withers away. On the opposite end, you might lose your character by becoming too changeling-esque. You might become too much of a fairy. You might wander too far into the dreaming and never come back. Or you might just embrace your fairy half so much that you go insane and lose your character. You can still die to physical damage, obviously. It's still the world of darkness. If a hunter finds out what you are, he's going to kill you. If a vampire is annoyed by you, they're going to kill you. Fun fact, there's actually rules in the Changeling Storyteller's Guide for what happens if a vampire drinks from the blood of a changeling. And it's interesting. But that's a talk for another time. I'm going on 10 minutes. Thank you very much for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.